Hello, and you're very welcome along to another edition of the JMAC podcast. I'm John McMahon, and of course, the podcast is kindly brought to you by yourgarage.com. Using the code JMAC podcast to get 15% off on their website. And it is here. It's All Ireland Senior Football Championship final time between Kerry and Donegal. So it came around quick, and we are absolutely buzzing for it. And we're all looking for tickets. But that is going to be a joy to behold. I'll start off with Mr. Joe Sheridan. How are you?
All good, yeah. Looking forward to it. Nothing like All Ireland final week and the buzz of it and run around like idiots trying to get tickets and pulling them from here, there, and everywhere. So, um, yeah, hoping it's gonna all the hype is gonna be built up to what it's gonna be, and that hopefully the match will live up to everyone's expectations. And yeah, it's I still find it strange. It's sort of end of July and you're looking at an All Ireland fine. It's trying to get your head around it. Come first week in August, it'll be all done and there'll be no talk about it and back to the clubs. But hopefully they'll do some of that in 2 years' time. But for the minute, we've just got to get on with it. But yeah, looking forward to it big time.
Absolutely. David Byrne, how are you?
Good, John. Good, good. Yeah, no, there's a nice buzz down here now in Kerry. Flag's gone up straight away after the semi-final last day. It gets going with Joe's there saying like it's strange in July still. I think me, a big hurling fan as well. Like, and there's a real anti-climax now when it's over. Like, and obviously not taken away from the club game. It's really important, but it's not the same coverage on a national level. Like, but I think the build up to the final, then the football final gets lost in the noise of the hurling like straight away afterwards, and you're instantly like the reaction to the hurling and then straight away into the football. But no, there's a proper buzz down here now, and I think everyone's up for it. I think it's something that people didn't expect at all. I think people were lucky, to see Kerry pass the quarter final after that loss in Meath. So there's a proper buzz now, and I think people are quietly confident down here, I think. But like just the way they played in the last two games, and yeah, what Joe was saying there, all over in 6 days' time. It's very strange, but I think the weather isn't helping either. Like, but it's no, there's real nice buzz around here. It's kind of what everyone's really talking about the last week or so.
Yeah, absolutely. Killian Whalen, how are you?
Good evening to you, John. Yeah, Davey's talking about the weather there. It felt like November here today, so I don't know what it was like on the rest of the East Coast lads that are here with me, but it nearly felt like All Ireland final weather in some ways. But I will pick up on a point there that both Joe and David said. I firmly believe I don't understand why the hurling and football finals follow each other. I definitely think that a break of a week would do it well. That when it was the first and third Sundays of September, why that wasn't maybe maintained when they did bring back the dates, and then intersperse it with the ladies' final and the camogie and whatever, because like such was the shock of Tipperary winning, that's going to get coverage until at least Wednesday, and the football then is fighting for, and then that's Thursday, Friday, like so. To me it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't do well for publicity and razzmatazz and everything like that. And I keep saying, we had this discussion, John, about a month ago. You'll see the Steelers and the package that'll come into town, for the 27th, 28th of September. That'll be a week long thing, and it'll blow everything that probably is done on this island out of the water. And I think someone should be looking at Crow Park, or definitely within GA anyway. Crow Park, I think on a management level, as regards events and stuff like that, they seem to have the wits about them. But as regards to GA, the organisation, probably need to have a look at maybe preparation and the publicity and everything like that that's done ahead of big events. Like it should get better splash, better publicity, no question. Because as I said, like Tipperary have stolen the headlines today, rightly so. We'll take the headlines tomorrow because obviously the homecoming, and sure then it's Wednesday really before you're starting to focus on the football. So that to me is
Yeah,
lost time.
yeah,
Boys, they don't need to sell it. That's the thing. They're all sold out. They don't care. The money's there.
they don't give a toss.
Madness. And I've said this about 3 years ago. The only reason that changed out of the summertime that it's been brought back is for concerts. It's for money, money, money. And Jarlath Burns sort of touched on it. The last time he spoke about it, he says we've concerts to get in. They can't be having concerts in September, October when they can't fill a house with sunny weather, and it's an underlying thing which is ridiculous that the players aren't playing at the right time of the year and they're trying to rush through games and all this. It's just something that really is it's a hard one to take because that's the real reason. It's all money.
Oh, interesting, lads. We'll get on to that now in a few minutes. Kevin Kennedy, last but not least, but obviously the best to last.
Okay, John, all good. Good to be back on. Good to see the boys in good form. Brilliant spectacle over the weekend there. Didn't see that coming. Didn't the win that came, but fair play to Stevie. He won the Open, and it was a great win for him. The win that was 153rd Open he won up in Port Royal, so it's all good.
Very good. Well, brilliant stuff, lads. And that is the main thing. We will crack right into the big game this weekend. It's the All Ireland Senior Football Championship final this Sunday, the 27th of July. It's Kerry against Donegal in Croke Park at 3:30. And of course, the game will be live on RTE and BBC. Well, the two best teams this year are going head to head this Sunday. It's going to be a sellout. Let's hope it's going to be a better All Ireland final than yesterday. Killian Whelan, this has the makings of an absolute classic.
And it doesn't either. But
Jesus Christ, you build it up, will you?
yeah. Which I can't have the Kerry lads getting their own way, and I love how you hop the ball with me, like here, Yeah, look, it's the big factor I think is going to be obviously how Donegal deal with Clifford, and obviously how Kerry maybe deal with the various different angles that Donegal are going to be able to kick scores from. So it could be a bit of a chess match in some ways. But like again, we have to think about if you marry it up against the hurling final yesterday, you've how anyone could have said that Tipperary probably don't have a chance here. I can't fathom, and I can't fathom how no pundit or anybody out there that's been looking at matches was able to say, "Oh yeah, Cork, it's Corks, that's it." Like at the end of the day, it was an All Ireland final. There's two teams in it. Anything potentially could happen. So like we can come on here and we can. I could say that I reckon it was going to be a Donegal Armagh final. It's been reminded to me a couple of times since that obviously that hasn't been the case. And but you're still looking at obviously the team that was going to beat Armagh then we're going to end up, I would think, in the final. And Donegal have been the team that we're going to always make it as well. So it's going to be interesting, John. I'm interested to hear what the other guys think on it. I think it's going to be a titanic struggle. Yeah, I think it could be an epic. I think the weather will play a factor probably too in some way. I'm glad the surface yesterday seemed to be better than it had been 3 weeks ago. I don't know what maybe has gone on there, but definitely it looked kind of burnt or dried out or whatever during the quarterfinals and then into the semi-final, if memory serves me right. And a lot of lads were slipping and sliding and on it. For the hurling match yesterday, it looked in pristine condition, so I think that'll be a factor. But as I said, weather looks like it could be a bit of a mixed bag. So, but look, look, the two best teams, look, inevitably when you get to an All Ireland final, they're the two that are there. And when you have the tradition of Kerry up against probably what the machine of Donegal, it's a bit of an arm wrestle that I'm still wrestling over who's going to win it ultimately.
Joe, shared your thoughts going into this game, and obviously me, the last day, unfortunately came across an unbelievable Donegal juggernaut of a team, and obviously Donegal are there in merit and they've had an incredible season. And I suppose just maybe your brief thoughts on Meade's performance last day and obviously thoughts ahead of this game on Sunday.
Yeah, I think we probably were like rabbits in headlights. We were seeing the 45-meter line and the 2 point arc and trying to pull them off too early and too quick when there was opportunities actually to create goal scoring opportunities in the first sort of 15 minutes. We had a couple of great opportunities to get scores and didn't take them. It was, and then when against Donegal, you're punished because the shot percentage is so high. I think it was 80% or something in the second half, or something ridiculous like that. But like we just went out, obviously had the game plan with that breeze. I didn't think it was as bad as it was, but down on pitch side, a lot of lads were saying how bad it was, and so RT were reporting on how strong the wind was. But I think it was very naive from our side of things that we didn't go at it. Like there was times we were coming through, and that's why I'm a bit regarding this weekend. Like Donegal were extremely open. I don't, maybe they didn't respect us that they were pushing up so much, but if we used our head at all, there was goal chances to be got there for the first 15-20 minutes, and we just didn't take them. And then look, Brian Mentigan off was a massive loss around the middle, lost any aerial presence. Having to bring Conor Gray on too early, probably with match fitness, probably didn't suit either. So his impact was sort of nullified to a point. But You know, Donegal, when they see a wounded animal, they go at it and they don't let up, and that's sort of the mentality that Jim has with this team, and anyone who's involved with, you can see that. So they're ruthless, and you can see that with how they finish out the game, and they got their goals, they got their scores, and they just can score from anywhere. That's the thing about Donegal. With Kerry, you're probably looking obviously Clifford, Shawnee O'Shea, and then you might get one or two that might throw 3 or 4 points in here or there. But you're looking at them two boys, and you can see what Kerry were like against me. Yes, they're missing lads, but when Clifford was nullified, you know, the scoring threat has come out. But I can't see anyone marking him, to be honest. I don't see anyone getting near him. He's just on a different level. He's upped it again. The last day, it was a joy to watch him now, to be honest. And you think, is he going to swing it from here? And yes, bang, over it goes. And he's, with Paulie coming back in, with Paul Gainey be fit, Joe O'Connor around the middle, the midfield battle will be a big thing, because the midfield battle, the Kerry midfield has been very up and down. It had that consistency there over the full, probably last 6 or 7 weeks, when you take in the sort of knockout stages and the group stages, that it's been very up and down. So it'd be very interesting to see. Did I see Jim O'Connor is back fit and he's in for the squad? Whether he'll play or not is another thing. But I'd imagine Kerry won't have too many changes. But it's going to be a massive battle. Donegal will obviously have a plan to do something. But if you try and double, triple up on David, you're giving the space then, because he's so clever to create opportunities and give a pass that, it's very hard to mark. And with Shawnee O'Shea getting another game in him and another couple of weeks of fitness levels into him, he's only going to come again. So yeah, it's going to be. I'm hoping with the way the game is, and it's going to be set up. I think it's going to be end to end, and let's hope we have a good game. But I just, with David Clifford on your team in Croke Park with all the space, it's very hard to see any team beating them.
Yeah, and even I suppose David Byrne there with David Clifford, and as I said to the lads last week, we could probably dedicate a whole podcast to David Clifford. But what he is doing for the Kerry public up there, and no doubt there's Clifford 14 jerseys, young kids walk around the streets, like he is just what that man's doing on this, I suppose, game at the minute is just incredible, remarkable stuff.
Yeah, and I think just such a modest, normal fella as well. Like he could walk, you'd often see him walk around here, Killarney, and he's left alone. Like he's a quiet fella, and I've often, when I first moved down here, you'd hear the legends of Mick O'Connell and Mick O'Dwyer and Jack O'Shea, and you think, what was it like to live down here through those eras? What were they like, as people? And when you're in the middle of it now, you don't realize that you're also now seeing like someone that people will talk about in 40, 50 years time, as one of the greatest players to ever play the game, and to witness him and see him, like, and we were very close to him in the semi final there against Tyrone, and to see him, I've been at club games, I've seen him up close from the side of the pitch, but to see him that close in huge crowd in Croke Park, I've been to NBA games in America, and just seeing players up close, and he's on that level. He's on that level in terms of skill level. He's like a fellow who played basketball at a professional level. He was that good on his movement, and I've never seen a player hop the ball with two hands so quickly just to create space for himself. But I think Joe hit it on the nail on the head there. I think teams have gone beyond or past now trying to double mark him, because you're creating space for other players. And I think someone touching it there, that the spread of scores, I think Kerry got, of the fifth starting 15, 6 players scored the last day starting. I think Donegal had 10. I think that could be the difference come Sunday. Their spread of scores. And even with that in Kerry, you had 2 or 3 players who got 2 or 3 points, 1, 2, 3 points. And I think Donegal have a much wider spread of scores. I think that could be the difference,
Kev Kennedy, your take on that?
Yeah, it's interesting to listen to lads there, and I was listening to one of there's a Philip McMahon the other day, and they done 20 minutes of analysing Donegal. You're talking about Donegal and analysing Donegal, and around about 8 minutes on Kerry. And I said to Philip, why was that? And he says, I think Kerry are a harder team to analyse than actually Donegal. Donegal have a process that works extremely well. if you take out the sort of in between, which is really important, how they're making those runs and where they're actually getting the scores from is pretty central. They don't take any much risks outside of that. They get in and it's just 1-1-1-1. If we manage to get a goal, brilliant. We'll not even try for a two unless we really have to. You know, they come away with maybe 2 or 3 2-pointers a game, if even that, you know, and they're always done just on the 40-meter arc. They're not 10 yards beyond the arc from play, different or free, but they're not 10 yards beyond the arc. They're so efficient on what they do, but everything over the last 3 games anyway, Monaghan, Meath, and Mayo, everything was in the middle. Slight preference to middle to right, but everything was in the middle. Whereas Kerry, on the other hand, Kerry have maybe less players hit them, but they have a wider spread of scores from left to right, I suppose. They take shots from outside the 45, they take shots from inside the 45. Their sort of conversion on goals hasn't been great over the last 2 games. Again, plenty of goal opportunities and maybe not taking as much as what they should. Maybe that'll come back to hunt Kerry at the weekend there. But it's such a, you know what you're going to get from Donegal. You're going to get a team that's high energy, high running, non-stop, working their backsides off for each other. But you're not going to get a team who are going to change and start hitting worldies from the sideline. You know, you're not going to get a team like that. They're always going to try and get into that middle. And a couple of their transition is quick, but also their phases of play are very quick as well. We've been talking about John for the last couple of years, and that's why I thought Galway went wrong against Mayo. They don't allow teams to get set up because they'll not wait for the third pass. They'll go on the second pass and then try and get a shot off whenever they're in around about that arc. And it doesn't matter who's hitting it, which is why, as Davis pointed out there, they're able to get 10 players on the score sheet because they're more worried about keeping their phases condensed, quick, getting the shot off, and then working on a sort of a high score volume and a decent enough percentage return. Like if Donegal still hit something ridiculous, like 85%, they'll end up with the scoreline like they did against Meath. You know, Meath wasn't a complete anomaly to their numbers. It was actually where they should be, but it just, as Joe's pointed out there, their just conversion rate that day was absolutely fantastic, and Meath were their own downfall in a way. You know, they didn't take their own chances for that. But if Kerry can slow them down and reduce and extend their phases of play, so if they can extend their phase of play maybe from a minute out to 2 minutes, it reduces that amount of shots that Donegal can get off. I think Kerry are far more. It's a more difficult team to analyse, but also I think Jack O'Connor has a big issue around about his starting 15. And if you think about the impact that, yes, the impact all the subs have had so far has been decent, but the impact that Paddy Clifford had coming on in the second half against Armagh was sensational. And I'm not always sure him and Sean O'Shea play their best football with each other, especially around about that number 11 position. You know, they're both brilliant centre half forwards, but I know it's been maybe talked about for a while. I don't think they do their best play around there, and it'll be interesting to see. I think Mark Rochelle probably start again. You'll have Micheál Burns probably named, but Joe touched on there now about the middle of the park. Those middle 3 that Kerry don't do a good press. Armagh was a blip. That 15 minutes was a blip. Against Tyrone, it wasn't great. But the biggest thing is that they had the players who can press in and slow Donegal down, but then you had to worry about that Sean Patton big boomer of a ball going 60 yards. And I would imagine that Donegal are firstly going to try and do what they done against Mayo back in the day, was just lump the ball straight into Michael Murphy, try and get an early goal and try and keep that wee gap of 2 or 3 points throughout that. But that Patton kick out, I think that Donegal or Kerry are going to have to almost change, for Donegal's kick out, change their midfield and half backline. They're going to have to switch them around so that you have the big men in behind as opposed to in the middle. Because where Donegal are very, very dangerous isn't winning clean ball. Patton's kick out is okay. It's not a brilliant conversion rate on it. The middle distance one, he puts a lot out over the line these days. It's almost one of the most used line is an uncharacteristic bad kick out by Sean Patton. You know, the more you listen to it, the more it's there. But if Kerry get caught out at the back, Donegal will make them pay. And often it is just from that wee flick on. And their wing half backs are running beyond the ball before the ball is actually broke to them, but they know it's going behind. They're not breaking in front. Mega Murphy will get up and they'll try and flick it on. Lang will try and flick it on. If they're not winning the clean, they try and knock it on another 10 yards. And we've seen against Derry last year the danger that happened against Meath as well, where your halfbacks are sort of caught out going one way. So I don't know. I think it's a brilliant game to be thinking about, but they're two pillars apart in terms of the only thing is if I think yes, Donegal do have fast and pace athletic players. They have good players as well, but they're not as classy in terms of their individualism as Kerry have, and like I said, Paddy O'Shea and even Big Joe O'Connor now coming into it. Davy Clifford, Shawnee O'Shea, Paddy Clifford, they're all on their day just individually brilliant. Whereas Donegal as a unit, I think, are better and they're just so process driven. So it's going to be actually a case of your process versus your natural raw talent, ability ways that way. So yeah, I want to know to call it or to point that to Donegal or to point that to Kerry, but I wouldn't know what way to call it. I think it's a really interesting game. Sometimes your process is where you go back to and it wins out. But if David Clifford doesn't turn up, and he hasn't turned up in I was saying about 2023 final against Dublin, the amount of opportunities that he had inside, it could cost Kerry the game. But hopefully, like Sean O'Shea, who wasn't brilliant the other day, but maybe he'll find the form he found in the quarterfinal against Armagh. And I would say they had Meath's confidence in kicking 2-pointers. As you were saying, there was probably silly versus the blood to the head. If Kerry take with Sean O'Shea especially, I think if he has a goal from anywhere, I'd say 50 yards, it's well worth it, because the last thing you want to do is get turned over in around about that deep by Donegal, because Donegal are quick at getting out. And it'd be interesting to see what they did in Murphy, because we've seen it, John, they didn't pick up Rian O'Neill, didn't man mark Rian O'Neill, so people talking about people man marking, they didn't man mark Rian O'Neill. They had whoever was the last man back basically picked up Rian. That shows you a lot of confidence they have in their defenders. Whereas a lot of teams will go and say, we'll get one person to pick up David Clifford, or he'll pick up Potty. Kerry don't seem to do that. They just seem to let whoever's last man back up pick up that player, and it was rotating throughout. So I don't know what way Kerry will go about it, but they'll probably be pig ignorant, stubborn, and say we're the kings of football. Let's go out against the most process driven team, and that makes for a great game potentially.
Yeah, it doesn't make it. Killian, it can be simple and as plain as this sometimes. When David Clifford doesn't show up for Kerry, sometimes it doesn't work too well for the Kingdom.
Yeah, but he's gone to a different level this year, I would think, John. Like he's led from the front. Jimmy McGuinness has even alluded to that, So like that to me is a key element in this, that David has definitely, taken it to another level. The one thing I'm going to pick up on something Kevin said, is something I was thinking about over the weekend a bit. The one thing I would be concerned is that Paddy Clifford is surely going to start. Is he? Like in regards to coming back, he's got the game time now. Would he be getting a starting shot? You would imagine, the Kerry injuries, unless David has any insight there, have cleared up. So you'd imagine some of those key components are going to be getting a starting shot. But he's right in what he says. When Clifford, Paddy, and Sean O'Shea are in the same area, it seems to have an impact, and it impacts Sean O'Shea. So, could you see, would they be able to identify that? Could you see Paddy playing closer to goal? Could you see, would Sean O'Shea be brought more out to the middle? But I think you need Sean O'Shea to kick the 2-pointers potentially. So that to me is going to be, I think anyway. I think how do you have the two of them in the same team, because I think you take a little bit. I think more so from Sean than you do from Paddy. When the two of them are on the pitch. Joel Connor's been a revelation middle of the field, but so is Michael Langan. That's going to be, an interesting tussle there. How do you deal with Rorty and how do you deal with Morgan, and the runs that they make? Are the Kerry forwards going to be able to be strong defensively? That's going to be, to me, a factor. But how do you deal with those runs? So all of, it's an interesting tactical battle, but you could have. Don't forget, Cork went into a game yesterday, if we were to use along the hurling lines. Cork went in trusting their own game plan and decided to be pig-headed and stubborn and change nothing. And Tipperary went against the tradition, I suppose. Liam Cahill had been quoting the week, no way are we playing a sweeper, blah, blah. Sure, of course he was going to say that when he was working away on a plan. The plan worked. Cork never adjusted, never changed anything, and they didn't win the game, and they actually got their backsides handed to them. I think if Kerry don't adjust, don't change something, and trust maybe that everything is going to work through David Clifford, they could get their backsides handed to them in some ways, you know. So I don't think it's going to be a 15-point beating or anything like that. But I do think there's got to be, you got to factor the Michael Murphy scenario, and you've got Kerry, to me, have to fight a few fires as regards the spread of scores that Donegal have. But one other thing I just want to say, I get it in here now in case I don't, would be that I think, and I'm going along with Kevin here again, and what a thing that he said. I feel Donegal though have to be ahead if they're going to win. I think they have to stay ahead. I think they will be looking to get early scores and maintain that distance. I think that's going to be a factor. So I would be thinking, will they be going for early shot opportunities, early 2-pointer, maybe even an early goal? Would that be something to try and push out, and then they'll be able to grind at Kerry a little bit. I think if Kerry get a bit of a footing, then we might have a different kind of game. But I said still lots and lots of tactical nuances going on, John.
Joe Sheridan, your thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, like the Michael Murphy thing is fascinating because he just takes so much pressure away from the other players. I think that's what helps the Donegal lads. You know, you look at the two O'Donnells there, they're having a great game. Like, um, the last two, like that, they can just come off him. You know, if with pace either side, you know, Thompson around centre forward. You know, the pressure's off them with Michael Murphy's there, and he's not doing a massive amount. Like people are talking him up to be like doing these outright, like he's doing simple things. He's winning ball. He's kicking points. He kicked 6 points against us. He kicked the 2-pointer free. So like he did come off with a niggle. I think that will be a worry. I know he's had 2 weeks, but he was hobbling it pretty hard, like, you know. So I don't think he's perfect. I know Jim was just trying to play it down. No, he's fine. He's fine. But I do think from watching it, he did pull up and he pulled him straight away. So there could be a slight worry there. That's the only thing with Michael Murphy. But you know, it's Jim will have them doing what they do, but I just think against ourselves and what I've seen that they are quite open at the back, you know. Um, they're gonna be they will play the way they play. The counter attack football is incredible, but you know the Kerry football, they very rarely give the ball away. You know, they don't get caught in tackles. They don't go into contact. They move the ball by foot pretty well, not pretty well, extremely well to compare to most teams. And they back themselves when they go 1-on-1 and they have the pace to go by. You know, I do think they'll have to get the matchups with the full back line because the Donegal full back line, they will be gone. You know, and you don't want to see the likes of the Gooch situation with Philly McMahon where Gooch was in the full forward line of of the Dublin side and Philly was up kicking points all day long. And I don't think Clifford would do that, but I'd imagine someone will pick up the mantle there and follow back because Clifford will be just holding forward. He'll work, but he's gonna need the boys to work around him, so he's not having to chase all the way back up and down the pitch. But it depends on Kerry. Defensively, they've probably tightened things up the last couple of games. They have done pretty well. You know, only conceding 17 points against their own was pretty good. No goals. You know, so they are actually as a unit. You can see them that they're probably developing more of a structure there that they're actually defending better as a unit because you know what we've seen through the league and sort of the beginning of the championship it was shocking stuff, and maybe that's just disrespect to the teams that they were playing and they didn't really pay much attention to it, but you can see that they have got a structure in place. But it's yeah, I just can't see Donegal, even though I don't think Donegal were, what was it, 20 to 30 points against us. I don't think they were that much better than us. I think the game was over at halftime. We sat off and allowed them to rack up a score. I don't think they're as good as they were that day. I think we just didn't perform and we were completely out of it. But they know how to play finals. They have a lot of experience there from the last final. Obviously Jim being there and they will have everything done to the finest tee, and they won't be listening to any outside noise. They'll have everything, whereas the Kerry boys will be a lot more relaxed, you know, taking it in their stride. So it's as someone was saying, like it's like black and white the way that you've got the purest of Kerry, whereas you have the structure of Donegal, and it could set up for a fantastic viewing and neutrals watching the game and ourselves. Like it could be a fantastic game end to end. The fitness levels of Donegal now compared to Kerry will probably come into play as well, because the Kerry boys, they like to trust their football more than their fitness levels. They don't like to be robotic, whereas the Donegal boys have so much pace and speed and power coming from everywhere. They come at waves of 7, 8, 9, 10, and just don't stop. It's incredible to see and watch, when you're up there live watching a game in Croke Park, watching them attack that space. Runs coming from everywhere. They're just given like freedom to go at whatever they want, and then they get back and they have the fitness levels to do that. So it'll be interesting to see how the Kerry boys can cope with that. Especially in the half back line of Kerry as well, to try and cope with that pace. But it's yeah, look, it's I do think Kerry will have too much on the day, but you just don't know. All Ireland finds, as Killian was saying with the yesterday, like it's belief, and if you take your eye off the ball for 1 minute, it could cost you big time. And look, finals are all about winning. It doesn't matter how you win it. It's just about getting it done. And if Donegal could win 6-5 on Sunday, they would happily do that, and Jim McGuinness would take that as well. So I think it's going to be an epic battle, and hopefully one of the biggest battles we've seen in a long, long time in the final.
Let's hope it's better than 2014 anyway, Joe. That's for certain.
Yeah.
David Byrne.
Yeah, I just think it's two very, very different sides. It's going to be a tactical battle, and I think that, I don't know, your heart as maybe a football purist, you'd want to see Kerry win, and I won't say Donegal are robotic, but they're such a structured team that I think it's just two different styles. I think it'll take a while to open up, but I think it'll be a fantastic game, and I just think we spoken on a couple of weeks ago. I think we compared 2009 when Kerry came through the back door, and looking back at it there this week, like they had a massive injury crisis back then as well. They nearly got knocked out by Sligo, and I think we called it, when they hit Croke Park, then they were a different animal. And I think Jack was manager back then as well. I think he took huge experience from that this year in dealing with the injuries. Fitness will be an issue, Dermot O'Connor's back training, but if they go on and win a All-Ireland this year with the injuries they've had, and I think it was a very, very flat Munster championship, but I think they'll take huge experience from their last 3 games are against Ulster opposition in Tyrone, Armagh and Cavan. I know they're different styles to Donegal, but I think that'll come into play as well. You look at the hurling final, if Patrick Horgan put that free over after half time, Cork were 7 points up. The crowd were getting behind them again, and they just went flat then afterwards. And I think tactically, Tipperary got it, and I think it'll come down to tactics. And if Jim gets it right, he'll nullify, the couple of players that have been brilliant for Kerry this year, and David Clifford, Sean O'Shea, and I think Donegal do have more of a spread of scores, and that kind of, more of a team, I suppose, and Kerry have the natural football. So it'll just be fascinating contrast, I think, between the two styles of teams. And, it's impossible to call. We'll sit here all day and talk about who will win, and that's what's making it fascinating. I think it's two evenly matched teams, but very, very different teams.
Matchups, Kev Kennedy, what are we thinking?
I don't think Kerry will get overly concerned about matchups. Kerry's game, as I said, it's not the purest football, but that's probably the best way of describing it. And it comes with more risks. Whenever you're kicking that ball in to David Clifford, there's always been said Johnny's got those go gadget arms where he pulls balls out of the sky that should be bouncing over his head. They'll be looking. I think Kerry will just line out as they are, and they'll take it as they come, and they seem to have enough trust in their players that they're quality enough defenders and good enough footballers that they can play most anywhere. Even like Gavin White, who's a right half back, left half back by natural. He was in centre half back because David says the injuries are there. They're content to slot players in and give them a goal on that. Whereas Donegal will look. I think most obvious thing is Joe's already touched on now. They'll try and put a runner on the David Clifford to try and pull him out of that position. That playing an extra man in front of him doesn't seem to work anymore. He seems to be able to handle that pretty well. I mean, McCole, but he'd probably be. I heard someone saying McCole would probably be the biggest challenge that David Clifford's had all year. What? It should be the other way about. It'll be a biggest challenge that McColl's had all year. That is there. He made Potter Clancy, who's a good footballer. He made him look like he was standing still many a time. So, I think that if after about 10 minutes, Michael Murphy will come out and he will probably be on somebody like, I don't know, Joe O'Connor or somebody there to try and stop him, particularly on the Kerry kick out. But I don't know where the matchups come from apart from the 15 starting and 15's lined out as well. I don't see there'll be many changes to the starting 15. I think Jack likes to make 2 changes a game. I can't see any wild cards from Jim McGuinness coming at this stage. And it's mad. There's actually more talk about Jim McGuinness than there is about Donegal, and maybe that helps Donegal. Maybe that helps Donegal in a way. Maybe it just takes some of that pressure off the players that are there. But I don't think Kerry will get concerned about who picks up who. They'll just play the man wherever he plays.
Killian Whelan, is this the sort of game maybe for Oisin Gallen, Paddy McBurgie to kind of take it by the scruff of the neck? Like, is it a game for the underdogs potentially?
Yeah, well, Jesus, call Oisin Gallen an underdog and wins an All-Star, didn't he? So, yeah, I think it could be someone else's game. It may be because I think there's going to have to be something done to get a team over the line here. I think that the tactical nuance of McGuinness, I think if Jack is stubborn, I'm not sure they win the game. That's what I'm coming back to here. You can't just rely that David Clifford will have a day where he's going to kick, let's say, 7 to 10 points. Okay, I just can't see that you could expect that. I think they're going to have to come up with something, personally. I think a lot of it is going to fall around the middle. I think a lot is going to be dictated by the kickouts. I think Shane Ryan has had a fantastic year. I think his kickouts, Patton's kickouts, they will determine. So then you're back down to the middle, and who's going to be in that middle. Personally, to me, I might try Sean O'Shea middle of the field, and maybe throw something, throw Donegal off in some way, because I still come back to this number 11's position with Paddy Clifford. If Paddy Clifford starts and Sean O'Shea, I think you're going to have to try some other tactic. So if Kerry stay stubborn and traditional, I'm not sure they win the game. That's what I'm kind of arguing here. But again, it may then lead to, if Paul Ganey's fit. Paul Ganey has enough talent to be able to turn and swing a game. You look at, again, I don't mean to keep leading back on the hurling, but you look at someone like, John McGrath and just his ability yesterday, just, to turn a game. Like he was quoted today, that it looks like a man he's playing the game at slow motion, and someone like Paul Ganey could be like that. Someone, Clifford can be like that, but Oisin Gallen at the other end can be like that. And we haven't seen the best of Oisin Gallen, obviously, this year with injury and so forth. Maybe tomorrow will be his day. Maybe it'll be Michael Langan's, or next Sunday will be his day. Maybe Michael Langan, it could be a day, So the thing is, I think there's more in Donegal. That's my thing. I'm not writing off Kerry here at all yet. I just think there's more, and there's strength in depth and everything like that as well. But maybe, just maybe, Kerry in Croke Park, All Ireland final day, with the injuries clearing up, and maybe one last hurrah, 70 minutes, Jack O'Connor giving it everything. They're a hard crew to stop. Like, you want to be down the M7 with them, with the cup on the bus, like, to have them beaten or wherever. Like, it's just it's a case in point now, John. I'd love it. I'd love to sit back down and just watch it tactically, but I think Kerry there's going to have to be something. There has to be a rabbit out of the hat.
Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, look, it's there's a lot of pressure on these Kerry boys. That's the thing. There's a lot of talk down there. They've only won one All Ireland. The pressure that's on them coming from inside the county more than outside the county is a big thing. And look, if it's known that it's Jacko's last year, that should spur them on. He's done a lot of work with a lot of these players, and he probably owes some of these players a lot of stuff. But it doesn't guarantee success either, you know. So it depends who deals with the big day as well. You know, there's a few of the Donegal boys that probably a wee bit mentally weaker. You know, you look at Oisin Gallen, he's been in and out of the team with form wise. Jim has pulled him a couple of times. You know, do they start McBurty? You know, he's a man for the big day. Whether they want to take away his impact coming on is another thing. But I think that the squad will be a big thing. You know, Donegal, the numbers that they have coming on, the experience they have coming off the bench is probably a bonus compared to what Kerry will have. You know, Kerry are sort of on a skeleton squad, on a full squad. You know, they might have the full numbers there, but whether they'll be able for an All-Ireland final and the pace of the game, that's probably one thing in Donegal's sort of on the side of Donegal going into the game. So um and also you've got to take into sort of outside factors, refereeing, decisions like that. You know, sometimes
Who's the ref on Sunday, lad? Sorry.
You're seeing it there. You know, what's his name?
Brendan Cawley.
Brendan Cawley. Yeah, Brendan Cawley from Sligo, I think. Yeah.
No, from Kildare, but
Oh, Kildare, yeah.
he's refereed them. You know, he has refereed both teams. Refereed the Ulster final, but has experience obviously of Kerry as well. So yeah, I agree with Joe. I think Brendan's performance again could have a major factor in the quality of this game. You know.
Yeah. But go on,
Yeah,
sorry, Joe.
it's some refs like to have different sort of ways of refereeing.
Mm.
You know, you'd like to see it like free flowing, you know, not pulling up too much, letting a bit of aggression, letting sort of the physicality go into the game and allowing the players to go at it, to be honest, you know. And if that's the case, you know, I think that'll probably help Kerry. You know, if it's stop start, Donegal would probably prefer that. They can get up and down, turnovers. If they're doing, you know, like some referees pull lads if they caught up steps. That's my thing. You know, others do, you know, sort of physicality, not enough physicality. So it all depends on how he's going to ref the game and how if he allows certain things go in the game, and it depends how it'll suit the two different teams. And yeah, it's as the lads are saying, like it's gonna be fascinating to see the setup and how it comes about, and you know, even the way Jim will talk, this, like, I'm sure the two teams that are named won't be the teams that will start, you know, so it'll be mind games even before the ball is thrown in. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see if there is any surprise. The surprise I will see is coming from Jim, if there's going to be anything there, to be honest. And as Killian said, you know, Jack will stick to his guns, and if it's, you know, to his detriment, that'll be it. But I don't think he'll change too much outside of how they've been playing, and sort of keeping to the same sort of way of style of play that they've had. And it'd be Jim will probably be the one springing a few surprises.
Mm. Absolutely. Mr. Kennedy, you have a bit of data to show there, do you?
I forgot I had that, but I was doing a bit of work on it last week. If you can share it, John, there if you want, but it's just to show the lads and any of the watchers on YouTube. Would seem if you strip it right back, and if you were to get this information, someone who's never played Gaelic football before, it's very easy to work out Donegal. It's very easy to work out what their game is in terms of where their shots and stuff are coming from. John was showing up, but there's the last 3 games, and you can see how condensed and tight it is. Now, there's a difference between they're very easy to work out, and then there's stopping them, which are two completely different things altogether. But I think if Kerry look at that, Kerry could do a Jim McGuinness and just say, right, don't worry about, you know, putting pressure on them in the 45, or just let them try and get into there and force them to shoot from outside that 40-meter arc, which isn't a good conversion for them. Whereas if you look at the Kerry one, the Kerry spread, I think that was a game against Armagh. It's just from left to right. It's just so hard to. Now, obviously, Shawnee O'Shea had a brilliant game that day, but it's just so hard to show up on it. But if you look at the Donegal one, I just threw them over the top of each other to see. But you can see how condensed actually their scores or their shots are around about that area. There's not a very big spread on them. Different players, yes, but it's getting into that zone and taking your high percentage shots that they hit.
Absolutely, Kev. I'm just having a tiny bit of bother. I could maybe try and make you. Let me see if you. If that might work there. Yeah, that might work. And David Byrne, I suppose, kind of thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I think Joe mentioned there the pressure from down here. I think actually the injury situation and kind of a very slow, flat kind of Munster championship. And I know Kerry won the league, but there was a point in them being off relegation, so that came as a shock. But I think surprisingly, I think that the injury situation has kind of lowered expectations down here. I don't think there is as much of a pressure on this Kerry team as there would have been in the past. So I think that could suit them as well. And I think the heavy defeat to Meath could be a silver lining in them going on and winning an All Ireland, because I think number one, it was a wake up call, and it kind of made them change. I suppose give them motivation, and also I think they've changed the way they've played since. I think they were very reluctant to go for 2 pointers, but they're very direct and they get goals. I think that that's the other side of it as well. Um, but I think there's less pressure on him than I think expected here, and I think that will, that could be the difference. I think, we're harping back in the hurling a lot, but there was a huge pressure on Cork, and I think that went against them yesterday. And I think, obviously, there's talk down here, and people, you know, there always is that expectation that Kerry will go far in Ireland, but I don't think there's that really added pressure that there has been in the last couple of years. It was there a couple of years ago when Dublin started to falter, and I think that could be a silver lining in kind of a slow start to the season.
Kev Kennedy, do you have that data? If you wanted to show it, do you have?
Yeah. And as I say, folks, this isn't a case of saying here's how you stop Donegal, but more it's a point of, if you look at that, their left and right channels are almost completely blank. There's nothing. There's no big wonder of shots from outside. The difficult angles, even if you look around about the arc, the 40-meter arc, look how close the 2-point attempts are from play. They're all on that line. The squares are freeze, so that's why they're a wee bit further out. But that's their efficiency. They know that they're not hitting 2-pointers from play 50 yards out or even 45 yards out. They're hitting them on the arc whenever they're there. Whereas if you maybe look to Kerry, for example, let's see the other one, and this just in one game I looked at, but you can see from left to right on that the Kerry aren't this condensed to the middle. They'll probably take more high risk shots just out on the end from tighter angles. Now the Donegal one, as I say, that's where they get to. You either let them get there and stop them from shooting in there, trying to force them out from the areas they don't like hitting shots from, or you do what every other team's done and challenge them face to face. If it was me, and I'm not Jack O'Connor's a good manager, I'm just a clown on a podcast. But if it was me,
You're much more than that, Kevin. Don't worry, you're much more than that. Jesus Christ.
I'd be looking to upset the Donegal process, and that means parking the bus in around about that arc inside around about the D and trying to extend their phases of play and push them out where there are less percentage shots, or the conversion rate is a lot lower outside that arc out on the wings, because Donegal still have players who can kick them, but it's not in the process at the moment to do it.
It was very obvious against us, Kev. Now they were working around and just waiting for that pop ball inside or a little hand pass, one runner coming off the shoulder. And it could be 5 yards inside the 40-meter arc, but that was that bang, just keep it ticking, keep it ticking. They weren't even looking to swing from 2 points.
No. And it's Joe, it seems last year, I heard Joe Brawley saying that Jim McGuinness is the first to exploit the rules. Jim McGuinness hasn't changed his game since last year. He's got better at the game he was playing last year. Hitting 35, 40 shots a game is where they were at last year. So they're still at that. We're talking about these 2-pointers and the value of a goal and all that. It was Cahir O'Kane. He says in a tweet or an article recently that was interesting that the two teams who've least focused on the 2-pointers are into the final, which statistically isn't true. Dublin and Mayo, they were atrocious at their 2-pointers, and they were out pretty early. But I think what he was getting at there, you have maybe Meath who were focused on an awful lot, Monaghan were focused on an awful lot. We still don't know what the best way up the mountain will be in time as these routes start to settle in and teams get better at kicking. We're up against a team who are traditionally kicking game and a running team, and that's probably why they've both reached the final, because they haven't if this game was played last year, I would have Kerry maybe 2-1 to win it, and I would have Donegal heavy favourites to win it, because I think that Kerry are just suited by 2 points a bit more than what Donegal will be, and that will keep Kerry in the game.
Oh, it's going to be very interesting, and obviously them great stats as well there. I suppose, lads, to kind of wrap up, Killian Whelan, any final thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I just Kevin is talking. We're all talking about stats there. I just seen Carol Kane has actually put up an article on the Irish News, and he's talking about the two magic numbers, 15 and 23, and he's talking about that David Clifford and Sean O'Shea's combined tally. If it comes to less than 15 points, it probably means that the opponent has won. So against Tyrone, he quotes here 65% against Armagh, 63% against Cavan, 69%, and it was 65% against Cork. So then, 23 points seems to be a tally that Donegal concedes. So to kick 15 out of 23 points, he maintains that's a high ceiling. So it's just an interesting look. It's an article maybe I'll share with you later, just to maybe rattle the heads around again that, that's asking a lot. Then you would potentially think of Sean O'Shea and David Clifford. So that comes into, I would have a question, maybe the lads who would know more than me. Would you let Clifford go and do David Clifford? And like David Clifford in All-Ireland final, what would he score? If we left him to just, let's say McCall is to mark him, would you be happy for him to score 1-7? Right?
2-8.
But lock down everything else. Like maybe Sean O'Shea would be the target then, that you man mark Sean O'Shea or you man mark Clifford, Paddy Clifford. I mean, you let David do, and let that, then don't get caught up in the whole situation. But lock down the supply, or lock down maybe the other key component in that in their repertoire. That might be something to think about, contemplate as well.
It's a big risk given how good Sean O'Shea was against Armagh.
Yeah.
If Sean O'Shea turns up, that's a bit of again, let's get Sean O'Shea for man of the match. But if Sean O'Shea turns up, and by all accounts, there's a lot of pressure on the dude, because he wasn't brilliant the last day. He was actually quiet in the second half against Armagh whenever Paddy Clifford did come on
the pitch, yeah.
And they pushed Shawnee in the midfield. Actually, they pushed him back a wee bit. But maybe he was quiet the last day because Clifford was more in that central role. He didn't get the opportunity to score as much. A lot's going to be on Shawnee, more so than I think David Clifford.
Yeah.
A lot's going to be on Shawnee O'Shea's shoulders.
So then that's why I'm going back to that argument. Do you put the pressure on Sean O'Shea then, and you let Clifford do David Clifford? Just maybe don't get caught up in the double marking or nullifying him. Maybe you take out the other part of that, because I do think they do need Sean O'Shea to be able to get his 3, 4, 5 points. That's going to be a factor, I think.
Joe
If they leave Clifford inside 1-on-1, it could be poor. I wouldn't like to know what he'd score if you left him inside for 70 minutes. He could have 4 or 5 goals banged away, and you've seen that in the final against Dublin. He did a couple of, he didn't have his best day shooting, but he could have had 3-10 like easily, and that's what he can do, and that's the only thing Donegal can look to maybe if he's. But he seems to have this killer instinct in his eye this year. The way he's gone on, he's driving everything on, and he's bringing the whole county along with him. So it's just, I just think he's
been unmarkable at times. He's been unmarkable at times, and
yeah, absolutely. But Joe, do you think he wins the game on his own?
Oh, he could, yeah.
Not others. Okay.
No, he could easily win on his own, but I think he's so good when they try and double triple him that he can see that pass, he can open it up, So he doesn't all like, for someone who scores so much, he's not greedy either. He knows when to shoot, he knows when to pass, he knows when to drop the shoulder, he knows when, like what he done to Hampsey, he threw him around like a rag doll, like it was crazy. And he's the pace of a 5'7" corner forward with the strength of like a midfielder. That's as the height he is, was he 6'3", 6'4", so his range is incredible. His right foot, you just don't know where he's going to shoot from. The range he has in his shot is off the charts. Like,
I think the big difference with him this year, you're saying he's gone to a whole new level. He's a lot more patient. He stays inside, he drifts left, he drifts right, and he's patient. He'll wait for the ball, and he needs half an inch and he'll get a point. I think He's seen it last year. He was dropping deep trying to get the ball, and he was getting kind of closer to the body. But I think that's a huge difference. He's
The new rules
matured, I
have
think, as
helped.
a footballer in that way.
The new rules have helped him, I think, David, haven't they?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And there's more space there, and that's probably why Kerry have been so ruthless at times, because the space with 1-on-1 with the skill level they have, it's very hard to mark the players that they have.
Yeah, David Clifford is almost going to be, if he doesn't turn up, he's the best defender Donegal have. You know, that kind of way. It's just because he has that ability to turn a game, and if it's not going his way, I think he's a lot more mature now. He'll go back to maybe sticking 1-pointers over, 2-pointers over, whatever it might be, if he's not getting those goal opportunities in say. But look, I don't think there's anybody in there that will not appreciate what we're going to see on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. Final thoughts. Suppose, Joe, who gets over the line for you?
Yeah, I just think Clifford's going to be the magic sprinkling dust on top of what could be an unbelievable game. And if you just see the two teams go at each other, I think just Kerry will have just too much firepower with the scores that they have, and what they can rack up is, and Donegal done against us, but I think the opposition is obviously a wee bit different this weekend. And yeah, let's hope for a good game. And I always look to Kerry to win the game, and for the last number of years I predicted Kerry winning games. They haven't won them, but I just think with Clifford inside and the supporting cast around him, I think that they'll just be too good.
Killian Whelan.
I would be agreeable with Joe. I'd love to see the best guy on the best stage have the day, and it all be backed up, and we're talking about David Clifford and a great win for Kerry. I just think this Donegal machine though has been put in place. I think every box has been ticked, everything has been put in order, and there's a bit of me still on the fence as regards who ultimately will come out on top. I think Donegal are going to try something in the first 10 minutes. I think we're going to see some kind of tactic, some kind of inside movement forward scenario. They're going to test that Kerry inside for a full back line, and maybe try and take a goal out of it. Didn't they do something similar against Mayo, I think, in 2014? So you might see something along those lines. I'm going to go with Donegal, and it's not again going, and the Kerry fans, I'm sure that have watched this podcast can't wait to berate me. But I just think the spread of scores could be the factor. And I think McGuinness, in case any lad out there will have stage fright or anything like that, look what Youth did in Croke Park yesterday. So I don't think, I'm not going to see Rorty get a shock of his life or anything like that being in Croke Park, or Michael Langan or any of those guys. I think they'll be so well versed and ready for it. I think the strength off the bench, I think you could see someone like Adaro Boyle or someone like that as well have a major impact in the discussion of this. But I'd love to see Clifford have a day and Kerry win it, but I'm going to go with Donegal.
Oh God, the Kerry faithful are going to be chasing you this week. David Byrne.
But it's worse for me if I go for Donegal, so I'm down here.
You're
Keep
within
an eye
striking
up there.
distance.
Yeah. Look, you could ask me in 5 minutes, I could change my mind. I think same with a lot of lads here. That's what's making it so interesting. But I think Donegal are so structured, and it's not Jim McGuinness has been involved in professional sport, and he brings that into the football now. How drilled and how structured and how fit they are. But I do think that Kerry have that little bit extra in terms. I think there's fire in their belly after what happened against Meath. I was saying there isn't pressure on them as much as you would think in recent years. That'll stand to them. I just think they have the natural footballers. There'll be a couple of points in it, but I think Kerry will get over the line.
Kevin Kennedy.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see what happens. We've seen David Clifford coming out of Croke Park the other week with Paddy Clifford, and that sort of was well documented. And yesterday, you seen Tipperary actually get off the bus inside the grounds at Croke Park as opposed to underneath, and try to get more. And I think that there might be a scrap getting into the tunnel before the match starts, because both teams might get off the bus and try and get that energy going. I think it's Kerry. I think Donegal are brilliant at what they do. But I have to say they played, and no disrespect to Monaghan, who've obviously come up into Division 1 now, but their last 2 games have been against Division 2 opposition. They played Mayo, They weren't brilliant against Mayo. Mayo being a Division 1 team. They weren't brilliant against Mayo, but they had 0-17 or so that day. Kerry have absolutely, and it wasn't Armagh didn't underperform. Armagh played to the level Armagh have been playing to all year. They completely blew a Division 1 team and Armagh out of the water and made them look like a Division 3 team. For a lot of that, Tyrone we know probably aren't singing on the high notes, but they look to be cruising to an awful lot of that game as well. Kerry could have maybe kicked on and won by more. I just think that Kerry will win the game. They could win it comfortably, but I think that they'll probably hit 26 as their tally, and I think Donegal will come shy of 25. I think it'll only be a point in it, but it will be to Kerry.
That's a massive call, Kev. That is a massive call. But lads, we cannot wait for this Sunday. This Sunday's All-Ireland football final between Kerry and Donegal. Obviously, really looking forward to it. Just before we go, lads, obviously, been in the managerial news. Kieran Donaghy has left the Armagh post and Kieran Mina is in line to take over the Derry senior footballer. So obviously, still a lot of managerial stuff going on. Joe Sheridan, any thoughts on it?
Yeah, look, I'm fascinated with this Derry thing because they've obviously they can't get over the Gallagher thing. They need to just move on from it and let whoever comes in get on with the job and try and drive on. They have a lot of good players. They're gonna leave it behind, trying to get Gallagher back in. Before they know it, Glass will be gone, Rogers will be gone. All these top class players where they've a serious squad of players, and if they don't move on, they'll never have any more success, and that's frustrating because obviously they had a lot of loyalty and a lot of success with him, but you can't just force it either. So yeah, Donaghy, look, fair track up and down to Armagh the whole time. I'm sure he's been well looked after, but it's a trek with a young family. I'd say he'd be down closer to home, and I'd say he'll be snapped up somewhere, whether it's next year with Kerry or wherever he's gonna go. He might take a year out, whatever, but he'll be a one-to man anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that'll be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of weeks. Well, lads, thanks a million for joining me this week. And of course, this podcast is kindly brought to you by yourgarage.com. Use my promo GMAC podcast to get 15% off on the website. Joe Sheridan, Killian Whelan, Kevin Kennedy, David Byrne, thank you very much. Lads, have a great week and enjoy the All-Ireland football final for 2025.
Thanks, Sean.